It's the Vancouver Hockey Show. Back once again, Andrew Wadden alongside the Healthy Scratches, Nick Houka, Jake Fraser, and a week that was, guys, a little perplexing for the Vancouver Canucks. A loss to Edmonton, a win over Calgary, and a loss to the New York Islanders, and what was a brutal loss to the New York Islanders, all at home, by the way. We're going to hear from the head coach and how he feels about the way the team has been playing at home over this stretch here. But let's rewind it all the way back to last Saturday, that 7-3 loss to the Oilers. I mean, one thing you have to commend the team for is coming back from down 3 buzz, sort of. But then that third period, which was completely horrendous for the Canucks. I have in my notes, Kevin Lankinen was awful, but it was not on Kevin Lankinen only, Nick. Like, this was a game where the Canucks were absolutely outmatched by a rival in the Edmonton Oilers. And, you know, the fact that Lankinen was basically just hung out to dry, you can't really blame the guy for having the third period that he did have.
Absolutely. Like, their first and third period were terrible. Like, they didn't even look like they were in the building. The skill deficit was just unbelievable. And this, like, we played with them to 7 games last year and didn't look like we're capable of getting past maybe game 5 if we played them right now. And then again, we picked it up in the second period and looked a little bit better. And then Lankinen, he let a couple softies in the third, which is kind of unlike him. But we shouldn't have even been in the game at that point, I don't think. I think it could have been 5-0 if Lankinen didn't play better in the first and second period.
Yeah, Lankinen definitely that third period. I mean, that Brett Kulak goal really stands out to me. His sneak at 5-hole, like that was a really weak goal, but you definitely can't blame it all on him. The shots ended up being 31-20. Like, they got outshot. They just got outright dominated by a team that we dominated all regular season last year. So Oilers are just returning the favor from last year, and hopefully we can do that in the playoffs.
Wow, you talk about those 31 shots, 16 of them in the third period alone for the Oilers. So, yeah, that's one, again, you just want to burn the tape on, but at the same time, too, you're going to want to learn some lessons out of that, because that's a team that you will likely see in the postseason. Have a very good chance in seeing in the postseason. You could see the Calgary Flames as well, and the Flames have been a decent surprise this year, but they didn't look all that good against the Canucks, but I don't think I would put it all on the Flames in that game. I mean, Jake, I thought this was the Canucks of old. Like, they were zipping the puck around. They looked really good against the Flames, and, you know, to follow it up with the game that they had on Thursday, which we'll get to in a moment, is not a good sign for the Canucks. But for one night only, that was a very good performance from the Canucks, and it looked like the Canucks of old, really.
Yeah, it was a great performance from the team as a whole. We saw Petey get 2 points, Miller get 2 points, Brandstrom get 2 points. You never really expect that. But, I thought Miller had a great game. He was moving the puck really well. That pass, that nice sauce over to Suter on Suter's goal, that was just a great old JT Miller play. And I don't think we've seen a lot of that from JT Miller this year. I'd like to see more of that. Same with Petey. That was back-to-back 2-point games. Kind of started to feel like maybe he's back. Maybe we're getting the Pettersson we were so used to seeing last year. But overall, yeah, that was a great performance from the team.
But Nick, what do you think, though, in terms of, like, you know, what you saw on Saturday from the Canucks, then to follow it up with that game against Calgary? Like, you know, you think that, okay, they got some juice now, but then they do what they did on Thursday, which is, and I don't want to say even revert back to what happened on Saturday. That was possibly the worst performance of the year, and has to be in the top 5, at least since Talk has taken over.
Yeah, that just a complete 180, right? I think that Calgary game, that's the best game we've played all year. As Jacob was saying, like, the puck movement was better than I think I've seen since last season. I thought all 4 lines were going. All 3 of our D pairs played really well. I thought the second and third period were outstanding. That was, obviously, you're always going to have some details, but as a coach, that'd be a game where I would be very happy. And then to just lay an egg like that against the Islanders, who are not doing that well this year, they're slightly above average. They don't have a good talent pool either. That's not a good team. They're average everywhere. They play that boring style of trap hockey that's borderline unwatchable. Thank you, Lou Lamoriello. Don't grow a mustache on that. Can't even grow a mustache on that team. That's how boring they are. Uh,
Can't have long hair either. You would not be able to be on that team at all.
No.
Like that mullet and that stash that you're rocking right now, like Lou would be like, get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
Shipping you out of here.
Way too much personality.
Yes, exactly. We did see that Lekaramaki made his NHL debut against the Flames. So a great story there in terms of making his debut, but an even better story that he scores in his second game against the Islanders, but then to have that performance from the Canucks. Clearly not what the rest of the team would want. But, I mean, what we've seen from the youngsters so far, like, I liked that goal quite a bit. Some good zip and some good sort of chemistry there with JT Miller. Listen, if you want to, find your footing in the NHL, maybe stick with number 9 there. You might be all right. But, in terms of a not-so-feel-good story coming out of that Islanders loss, guys, I mean, Lekaramaki scoring his goal, you got to like that.
I really like that. Obviously, that kid can shoot the puck better than a lot of guys in the league right now already. But I think he's got a lot of skill in transition. He is so good in the transition game, moving his feet through the neutral zone with and without the puck. I think he looks like an NHL player when he's doing that. And the small things, like they're coming too. Like I don't think he's been bad defensively. I think that was a bit of a concern going into his debut and his second game. People were wondering if he could be a talk-it player. A lot of people have been throwing that around. But I think as far as what I've seen so far, he has been exactly what they need in that top 6. Like he's been able to fill that Boeser role to a lesser extent, of course, but he's been able to fill that role well in his first couple games that we've seen from him.
I think he's already playing quite confidently, too, with the puck. I love his decision-making. He gets the puck off his stick quick. It doesn't look like the speed of the NHL game is too much for him. He gets the puck. His eyes are always up. He doesn't get stuck like you see a lot of young players do. He quickly moves the puck. He's a great passer. He's got, obviously, a great shot. And he doesn't look out of place. The one thing I will say, I think he needs to hit the weight room a little bit. He kind of reminds me of a younger Pettersson in some ways. He loses a lot of battles and gets out muscled, but that can come with time, and that is a teachable, and that's something that you can progress to get to. So that doesn't worry me. I think right now he's got a great skill set, and I think he's doing a very admirable job of filling in for Boeser.
You also did a video on TikTok today, Jake, talking about just, who is going to step up in the absence of Brock Boeser. Now, a lot of people are replying, to the post saying, TP40, obviously. But I think that was kind of already sort of stated, so to speak. I think what your point was, who's going to step up on the wing and sort of, fill that void. Do you think it could be Lekaramaki? Because you did talk about him in the video. But, I mean, that is a lot to put on a youngster who's only 2 NHL games in.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it can be him. I don't, like you said, I don't really want to put that expectation on the kid. I just want, like Talkit said, just let him play his game, let him find his way in the NHL. I don't know if he's necessarily going to stick around here. I think it could just be a little test the waters. He's been doing well in the AHL, so we'll give him an opportunity. But I'd really like to see Jake DeBrusk step up. I mean, that guy, I didn't even realize he played last night, to be frank. I want to know how many times that guy touched the puck in that game. He was non-existent. I didn't think he had a great game against Edmonton and Calgary. I mean, we were saying everyone played well, but even in that game, didn't really notice him a ton. He had that 3-game streak where in the California road trip where he had a three straight games with a goal, and we were like, oh wow, maybe he could be back. Maybe he could be the 30-goal scorer we were hoping for again. But I mean, he's disappeared again. I just don't understand it.
Yeah, guys, over the last 3 games, 3 shots on goal, and they all happened against Calgary. So you pinpointed the Edmonton game and the Islanders game, which obviously the team was awful as a whole. But yeah, Jake DeBrusk with a goose egg for shots on goal in both of those games. And this is a guy you're paying to score goals at this point, right? So, Nick, he brings up DeBrusk, and obviously DeBrusk would be that guy. But who do you think, Nick, outside of maybe Jake DeBrusk, could be a guy to step up? Because one name that I have circled, and we're going to talk about him a little bit later on, is Nils Hoglander. And Nils Hoglander was one of those guys that 20-goal scorer. Hey, he's going to take a step this year. he has not taken that step. In fact, I would argue that he's regressing right now.
Yeah, I thought he played terrible yesterday, as did most of the team. But there was that one rush where he gets the puck along the boards on the right wall, and he has, I forget who, cutting straight to the net wide open, and he just holds on to the puck and loses it like he's in Pee Wee hockey with his head down. Come on, man. Like, he's a smart player and usually doesn't make mistakes like that. I saw another couple plays where, to be fair, he was tired, but he got the puck in the neutral zone and can just throw a quick little outlet pass to his defenseman and get off the ice and change, and he just throws it right back to the Islanders defenseman. Like, he's just not playing smart right now, which is weird and unlike him, because usually he's quite poised with the puck and plays with a lot of energy. I'm not seeing that energy anymore, which is quite strange, because that's kind of his thing. I don't know if it's a little bit of a PD effect with now he's got paid and now he's kind of checked out, but he's not stepping up. And I think for our depth players overall, we have a big problem with consistency right now. One game, like the Flames game, all of our big guys and our depth guys look great. And you think, oh, they've kind of overcome the hurdle that they're going over and they're going to make that next big step. And then a game later, we just look lost again. It's super frustrating to watch.
Well, if it's frustrating for the fans, what do you think it is for Rick Tocchet? And especially the home ice record, because the home ice record it's not good, and the head coach talked about it. We'll hear from him in just a second here. But the head coach talked about it last night. People are paying $300-$400 for these tickets. And you guys are doing this, right? He didn't want to talk about individual players. Throughout the post-game presser, he did allude to the fact that, you can kind of figure out who he was talking about. But this is how he started things off, because somebody asked him about individual players, and the head coach didn't want any of it.
I'm not going to, don't ask me about individual players today, okay? No offense. I got to apologize to the fans. We're not playing good enough at home. It's on me. Guys played light tonight. I thought we were ready to go. We weren't. It's on me. I got to get this team to play harder in the first period. Spurts here and there, but not enough from a lot of guys. So got to go practice tomorrow and go right back to the drawing board. So that's really what it is. So don't ask me about individual players. I'm not going to answer that. You guys saw it, so thanks.
I mean, it's on me. I like the fact that the head coach comes out and says that, but it's not on him. And the coaching staff has to bear some responsibility for this. But when you come out and you just play so passive the way you do against a team like the Islanders, and a team like the Islanders, that's a heavy team. Yeah, they might be boring, but they're big, they're heavy, and they love to play, drag it out sort of hockey, right? Whereas the Canucks want to play up tempo. So, they're going to have to figure out, how to adjust their game to play against teams, like the Islanders. And just through the week that we saw, for the Canucks to have, such a great game against Calgary, but those two sort of against Edmonton and New York, you can see why the head coach, Jake, would just be completely frustrated, with the players. And when he talks about, this sort of softness that they're playing with, at that point, I think that's when you can sort of figure out who he's got in the crosshairs.
Yeah, definitely. One of the guys that comes to mind for me is Carson Soucy. I mean, we all saw that Pierre Engvall goal. That's Soucy's guy. Soucy is completely lost, lets Engvall walk through untouched, tap in on a rebound. Like, it's frustrating to watch. I mean, there was the goal that I think it was Palmieri scored that ended up getting disallowed because of the offside. But Soucy just does a little flyby there, and yeah, Ratu had a bad turnover, made a bad play, but Soucy just dives through, little flyby, and puck ends up in the back of the net. This was a guy that last year in the playoffs we relied upon to go shut down Connor McDavid, the best player in the world. And now I feel like you can't even rely on him to go out there and shut down another team's third line. Like, it's really frustrating to see. And you were talking about Hoglander regressing. I think Soucy might have regressed more than anyone else on this team so far this season.
Nick, what do you think though? I could say, listen, Tyler Myers is probably going to take a step back, right? After, going into this season. You had a good year last year. You got an extension. That's great. But I think everybody understood that, at some point here, we're going to see a bit of regression for Tyler Myers. But that wasn't the thought, at least for Carson Soucy. Like, this is the guy that you thought was going to be Mr. Steady for the Canucks. And as Jake points out, like it's just not the case right now. But it's also not just him, right? Like this defense core is in shambles right now. Anybody that's not, Hughes or Hronek, and Hronek's had his issues as well, but really Hughes is the only guy really that can sort of be left out of this conversation right now. The Canucks D as a whole just really, really needs some work.
Absolutely. First of all, I do love Tocchet kind of deflecting the blame to the players on him. I think that's what great coaches do. I wish my favorite football team's head coach, Doug Peterson, would do the same thing and stop blaming our star quarterback. But anyway, it's so weird with Soucy because he kind of plays that style of play where you feel like a guy can play to a really high level until he's like 35, 36. He's not a great skater, right? He's not this incredible puck mover. He's just solid at everything, and he plays a very simple game, and he plays physical on the back end, and he gets the puck out. And I don't know how he's struggling so much right now, but I think it kind of comes down to, as the Canucks as a whole, especially their D-core, all those little details that Tocchet preaches that we were so good at last year, I feel like they've gone out the window. I feel like we don't box out in front of the net anymore. I feel like we don't back check as hard. I feel like our defensive zone coverage is terrible and we puck watch all the time. Those are all things we didn't do last year, and Tocchet has really emphasized. And I think that's on the players because he's instilled this in them. And if they're just breaking away and kind of freestyling, as a coach, you can only do so much. If you're constantly preaching stuff and your players are just disregarding it, that's on them, not you.
Yeah, and everything that you mentioned there too, like that's effort as well, right? Like that's something that's easily fixable because it's just lack of effort at that point, right? So, it is strange because, the players really, were buying everything that Tocchet and the coaching staff were selling last year. And then this year, it just seems like they just can't seem to get together. I thought perhaps that he was also talking about Pettersson there, Jake, because, this is a guy that, he's starting to turn a corner a little bit. He did lead the team in scoring last week with 4 points, 2-2. With Boeser out, he's starting to cook a little bit, which is good. You do want that because that is the expectation for a guy that's making $11.5 million. But I always find that when Talk is talking about sort of, digging deep and calling out, the softness and stuff like that, it just feels like EP40 has just been circled in that conversation.
Yeah, definitely. I think he has gotten a lot better in that aspect, though. Like, I mean, for the team only having 26 shots last night, he ended up with 6 of them. Like, he's definitely, I think, turning that new leaf. He's playing a lot better, but there's still a lot more to come from him, I think, and a lot more expected of him. He's still maybe not winning as many battles, maybe not as good on the draws as Tocchet would like. I mean, 40% on the faceoffs last night. He's got to be a little bit better in doing those little things, but as far as his overall game is coming around, I think we're starting to see a little bit of a step up from PD.
There are some people, though, Nick, that are like in our TikTok and on our Instagram, and there's one guy in particular that was like, I want the, apologies for Pettersson to be as loud as, the negative talk about him. And I personally just don't think he's out of the woods yet.
No, not at all. I think him and a lot of the Canucks stars, they disappear in big games or when we need them most. When you're struggling like you are yesterday, you need your stars to step up and make a big play. And yeah, he's not playing bad. I don't think he's playing bad, but he's not playing up to that dollar range that he's making, and he's not playing to the level that he should be. He has the skill to be a top 5, top 10 player in the league. He's not there right now. He doesn't take control of games. He doesn't, when things aren't going their way, I never see him take the team on his back and lead them back to get some momentum and get back into the game. I never see him do that, ever.
Well, with the money he's making, like that's the expectation, and you really can't afford to be he's taken off a quarter of the season already. Where are we at right now in terms of games played? Like 18, something like that. So we're getting close to a quarter of the season right now. And at this point, if you are going to be in that echelon of players, you've got to find it. You have to turn around. And it's on PD right now, especially with the week they got ahead here. All games at home, like you want to see 40 absolutely cooking this week. You want to see him be the best player on the ice and see if we can get that from EP40 because I haven't seen it yet this year. Kevin Lankinen has been good. And I want to preface this right off the top as I say this. But it's 6 straight starts now for Lankinen, and the numbers aren't great. Wondering if you're starting to see a bit of sign of fatigue here, Jake. Now, we know that Kevin Lankinen hasn't had this sort of workload ever in his career, and this is sort of new to him. But at the same time, too, like, if you know anything about goaltenders, they want to play. Like, they want the net every single at night, right? There's only one night net to defend. They want to be the guy that's able to do it. I wonder, though, if it's best to sort of maybe take a bit of workload off of Lankinen right now. And also, too, like, at some point here, you got to really see what you got with Archer Seeloss because their early returns have not been fantastic. If Demko is going to continue to be, on an island, which is what he is, I think that it's pretty important right now, especially with this week ahead, where all games are at home, although we do have the back-to-back there. So we will see Seeloss once, but I think it's important to, get Lankinen some rest, but also really see what you got with Seeloss.
Yeah, I think it's important to get Shelovs in there on Saturday. Give him the Blackhawks game, see how he performs against a weaker opponent, and give Lankinen the net on Saturday. Hopefully he can have a big game against his former team, show them they made a mistake letting him go. And then I think from there you just reevaluate, and on Tuesday against the Rangers, it just depends on who you felt had a better game over the weekend. But I think Lankinen overall, he's exceeded everyone's expectations to this point in the year. I've really liked what we've gotten out of him, and you can only expect so much. He's only had the one really bad game, which was against the Oilers, like we had talked about earlier in the episode here. But overall, I think he's been really solid for us, and there definitely has to be some fatigue factor because he hasn't seen the workload he's getting. But yeah, I think you just gotta go into this weekend, split the games for the back-to-back, and then you evaluate from there.
Keep in mind, though, too, Jake, both these teams they're seeing this weekend are former teams for Kevin Lankinen. He was also a Blackhawk at one point as well, right? So I do wonder, though, like you did say, Saturday for Shelovs and then Sunday for Lankinen. I am wondering, that probably is the correct rotation just because of the fact that Lankinen has had 6 in a row. Where are you at with Dakota Joshua right now, Nick? We saw him come back. I mean, obviously it's going to take some time for him to get into a groove. I don't think enough is really being made out of how big of a return this is. I mean, the guy came back from testicular cancer. Like that's not easy to come back from. But I'm wondering where you think he's best slotted. Is it just back with that line, back with his old buddies in Bluger and Garland?
Yeah, I would say so. Trying to find that chemistry and get his game back. Just such a warrior to come back from that so quickly. That's just insane, right? Like that's something that people take like almost years to feel back to normal after having happened to him. The fact he's playing a professional sport and playing pretty good minutes yesterday too in his first game back is just absolutely amazing. Just hats off to him. Incredible. I think being back on that line will be good for him as he finds his game. It'll probably take 5 to 10 to try to get back to even a semblance of where he left off, right? Especially a guy that plays such a physical game. Just getting back in game shape and everything, despite skating with the team, it's always different, right? So I think that'll take some time. I wanted to touch on the Lankinen thing really quickly. It's kind of reminding me, do you remember when Alex Auld took over for the first time back in the day? That's what it's kind of reminding me of. Like Auld was really good for the first like 20, 30 games. And then he wasn't used to the workload. And I think he admitted, I think it was on it was on a podcast. I think it was the West Coast Express podcast with Scotty Rentoul. He admitted like he wasn't used to the workload and his body just started to kind of give out on him. So that's what that's kind of reminding me of.
Yeah,
right now with his play.
Good poll there. Yeah, Alex. The funny about Alex Auld is I always thought he was a really good analyst as well, but guess he chose a different profession after that. And a good shout out to our buddy Scott Rintoul there. All right, before we put a bow on this, though, I do want to circle back to Hoglander because, we did talk about the fact that, perhaps they'll subtract from the forward group that they have some depth in to be able to improve the blue line. The blue line definitely needs some improvement, although Brandstrom's been a good addition. I do have to give him that. But where does that leave Nils Hoglander now? Because we saw at practice, we're recording this on Friday. So at practice today, he was on the fourth line there. I mean, he always just seems to be in and out of Tocchet's doghouse. At some point, though, like Tocchet's just going to burn the house down, right? Like, or just get rid of the dog, I guess. Maybe a bad analogy there, but, like it's just doesn't seem to be his kind of guy. And when you do have the sort of resume, Jake, that Hoglander's got, being a 20-goal scorer in the NHL is nothing to scoff at. Maybe he's the right guy to sort of be putting out there to see, what they could get. Now, there could be risk here as well because, we have seen, Nils Hoglander be able to produce in the past, but it just seems like, the way that he has worked with Tocchet, if there was somebody I think to be able to dangle, I think it might be Hoagie.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm a big Hoglander fan. I love the way he plays. It's actually the only jersey I own is a Nils Hoglander jersey, so I'd be a little upset to let him go. But yeah, I think right now he is the trade bait. I've seen a lot of fans on Twitter saying dish him to Pittsburgh and bring in Marcus Pettersson. I know that's a name that's been rumored a little bit over the past couple seasons. I think if you send Hoglander to Pittsburgh, he's going to put up 30 goals with Sidney Crosby. But I don't know. I feel like I could maybe put up 30 with Crosby, but
there you go. Well, he better get used to losing if he goes to Pittsburgh. I'll tell you that because they are not a good team. But yeah, I do wonder, Nick, like when it comes to Hoglander, like it might also be one of those things because he's so well liked amongst the group, and he meshes really well with them. And I know he's good friends with Pettersson as well. And the whole Swedish connection that, Vancouver's had for years, really, but it's always very prominent with the team right now. But I do wonder if there is sort of that, risk involved, like, what if we do send this guy away and he ends up lost? Because there are points of Hoglander's game that I absolutely love. Like Jake points out, like he can be tenacious at times. He can be a pain in the ass, thorn in your side, gritty in front of the net, especially for his size. But then you see the other stuff that you're just like, what are you doing? Like, and this ain't like, he's not new in the league now at this point. So these mistakes that he does make, like they're kind of that much more glaring because of the fact that, he isn't, a rookie in this league anymore.
Yeah, it's quite frustrating. I don't get where that's coming from because we didn't really see a lot of that last year. Before we jump to conclusions and if we make a trade with him in it, here's what I want to see. This is a hot take and everyone always disagrees with me. I want to see Hronek carry his own pair. I know he and Hughes are excellent together. I understand that. I don't think Quinn Hughes needs an excellent defenseman with him. The way he is playing right now, where he is shooting the puck, I don't think Hronek provides that much to him because Hughes is making a lot of outlet passes to forwards and kind of creating on his own. I want to see Hronek carry the second pair. Maybe putting him with Soucy will help Soucy get his game back because he has to do less. And again, Myers and Hughes, I don't know about that. Maybe you make a deal for a late round draft pick to get a Luke Shen type out to play with Hughes who can just sit back while Hughes does everything. But I don't want to move Hoglander quite yet. And I want to see Hronek move down to the second pair and carry that second pair before we make any drastic.
Yeah, we've seen Hughes and Myers before. It wasn't fantastic, but at the same time too, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that was more when Boudreau was the head coach. Like, have we seen it that much with Tocchet? I don't know. So yeah, maybe you're right there, and maybe that is the adjustment that they at least need to try right now before they start, subtracting guys that perhaps they might regret, down the road. So we'll see where the Canucks are headed in that regard, but we know they are headed to a busy weekend because they have a back-to-back this weekend with Chicago and Nashville rolling through town, and then they wrap up the homestand with the Rangers. And I don't know about you guys, but I've got that game absolutely circled because anytime the Rangers come to town, It's always a good time, and they're a really, really good team. So see how the Canucks can measure up with the Rangers. But they got to face the Blackhawks and Connor Bedard, and then, of course, the Nashville Predators with Luke Shen, your old buddy there that you mentioned there on Sunday. So we'll put a bow on this one for the Healthy Scratches, Jake and Nick. I'm Andrew Wadden. Thanks for listening.